Move it along, Grandpa. You're scaring the customers. That's what the manager said, loudly, sharply, to a frail old man standing uncertainly near the entrance of the Liberty Bell diner. His hand trembled slightly on the handle of a walking cane. His shoulders stooped from years of labor or perhaps the weight of memories that never quite faded. The man's name was Walter Dean, and this diner had been his Sunday ritual for nearly 30 years. A hush fell across the room. Some patrons awkwardly stared into their mugs. Others chuckled behind coffee cups, whispering in the kind of tone that only surfaces when people are too cowardly to speak openly. Nobody moved to help. Nobody spoke up. Except one man. He stood quietly. No shouting, no anger. Just 5 simple words, delivered like a promise. You'll regret this by sunset. An hour later, the quiet street outside the diner was lined with sleek black SUVs, military grade, tinted windows, unmarked plates. The kind of presence that makes even the toughest men stop mid-step. But let's go back, because this story didn't begin with an insult. It began with routine, with a man who believed in order, in tradition, and in community. The Liberty Bell Diner had stood at the heart of Millfield for more than 60 years. It wasn't fancy. The booths squeaked. The jukebox in the corner rarely worked. But for people like Walter, it was sacred ground. Every Sunday for nearly 3 decades, he arrived precisely at 9:30 a.m. Not a minute earlier, not a second later. He'd take the third booth from the door, nod at the staff he knew by name, and order a simple meal, coffee with 2 sugars and a BLT cut diagonally. Always the same, always appreciated. Walter didn't crave attention. He didn't talk much. He tipped modestly. And he never asked for anything more than his booth, his sandwich, and his piece. But time moves, ownership changes, and tradition doesn't always survive efficiency. The diner had recently been purchased by Franklin Hospitality Group, a corporate entity with no roots in Millfield. With the acquisition came changes. The old staff was let go. In their place came new hires. Most were unfamiliar with the regulars, and even more unfamiliar with the unspoken codes of respect small towns live by. Trevor Brooks, the new manager, was young, slick-haired, and polished. He talked more about clientele demographics than coffee, wore designer loafers, spoke in buzzwords, believed spreadsheets mattered more than people. On that Sunday morning, Walter's gait was slower than usual. Time had carved itself into his bones. His back bent not only from age, but from a lifetime of burdens, including injuries sustained in the jungle during wartime. His army jacket, threadbare and faded, clung to him like a second skin. His boots scuffed along the sidewalk as he made his way to the entrance. He paused briefly to read the new sign. Liberty Bell Diner, under new management, where every meal makes freedom ring. Walter smiled faintly. He'd fought for freedom once. He understood its cost better than any marketing executive ever could. He stepped inside. The familiar scent of bacon and coffee drifted through the air, but the faces were unfamiliar. Behind the counter stood Trevor Brooks, arms crossed, eyes narrowing as Walter entered. "Can I help you?" Trevor asked, voice tight, laced with irritation rather than hospitality. "Just heading to my usual booth," Walter replied, steady and polite. "We're full right now," Trevor snapped, stepping into his path. Walter looked around at the half-empty diner, the empty booth waiting for him like always. "I don't mind waiting," he offered. Trevor leaned in, dropping his voice just enough for others to hear. "We're trying to create a certain atmosphere here, a certain clientele." Walter blinked. "I've been coming here every Sunday for—" "Move it along, Grandpa," Trevor interrupted. "You're scaring the customers." The silence in the diner grew thick. Embarrassed laughter, avoidant stares, a few chuckles. Walter's cheeks flushed, but he didn't speak back. He'd been taught to carry his dignity in silence. Quiet strength. That's what his generation believed in. He turned slowly, hand on his cane, ready to leave. That's when a chair scraped across the floor. From the corner booth, a man stood. Daniel Ross had been watching since Walter walked in. Mid-40s, calm, unassuming. A man you wouldn't look twice at until he looked at you. His movements were deliberate, calculated, the kind of stillness that comes only from experience, military maybe, or something close. Without rushing, Daniel crossed the diner and stepped directly between Trevor and Walter. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. Trevor tried to reassert his authority, straightened his tie. "No problem," he lied. "Just explaining our seating policy to—" "I heard what you said," Daniel cut in. "Every word." He turned to Walter. His voice softened. "Sir, looks like there's a booth open. Would you mind joining me for a cup of coffee?" Walter hesitated. "I don't want to cause trouble." "It'd be my honor," Daniel said, loud enough for everyone to hear. He offered his arm, and Walter accepted. They walked together to the booth, Walter, steadied by dignity and pain. Daniel, silent and certain. Daniel ordered 2 coffees, and without hesitation, "And whatever my friend usually gets, a BLT cut diagonally." The young waitress, clearly shaken but relieved, nodded and moved to the kitchen. Trevor wasn't finished. He approached the table, forced smile back on. "Sir, as the manager, You'll regret this by sunset," Daniel said without raising his voice. He didn't yell, he didn't threaten, but the air shifted. The words struck deep, calm, measured, inevitable. Trevor scoffed. "What? You going to leave a bad Yelp review?" Daniel didn't answer, just smiled. The kind of smile that knows, the kind of smile that's seen things. For 40 minutes, Walter and Daniel talked about fishing, weather, the local football team's chances, nothing important. And yet, everything important. They didn't talk about war. They didn't talk about pain. They didn't need to. Walter didn't know that while they talked, Daniel had already sent a message. 3 words and a location. Nothing more. But it was enough. Outside, SUVs began arriving. Silent, steady, lined up like soldiers. The street filled with black vehicles and onlookers whispering. Inside, Daniel checked his watch. "Should be about time," he said. "Time for what?" Walter asked. The bell above the door jingled. The man who entered wore the full-dress uniform of a 4-star general in the United States Marine Corps. His chest shimmered with medals and ribbons. His face was grave, respectful, his stride impeccable. Behind him, 2 aides followed, formal, crisp, silent. He scanned the room with the discipline of someone trained to assess a battlefield in seconds, and then he saw Walter. Recognition flared in his eyes. Recognition and something deeper. He approached. Walter, stunned, tried to rise. "Please, sir, remain seated," the general said, voice soft but commanding. Then, before the entire diner, the general stood at attention and rendered a flawless salute. "Staff Sergeant Walter Dean," he said, "it's been far too long." The silence in the diner was absolute, the kind of silence that carries weight. Trevor emerged from the back, now pale, confused, trembling slightly. "What? What's going on?" he stammered. The general turned to him, and then to the entire diner. "What's going on?" he said, voice echoing, "is that I am paying my respects to the man who saved my life and the lives of 14 others on April 12th, 1969, outside Cam Low." Murmurs rippled, eyes widened. "This man," the general continued, "carried a wounded radio operator 3 miles through enemy fire with shrapnel in his own leg. He coordinated a defense under fire until extraction came. He didn't run. He didn't flinch. He stood his ground." Trevor looked like he might collapse. "Sir, I didn't know—" "You didn't ask," the general said. "You saw an old man in worn clothes, and you dismissed him." The weight of the words fell heavy. The general sat beside Walter, spoke with him softly. The crowd of diners now stood, some offering salutes, others simply laying a hand on their hearts. The young waitress returned with fresh coffee. Her voice trembled. "My grandfather served in Vietnam, too. He never talks about it. But thank you, sir." Walter nodded, unable to speak. In time, Daniel Ross slipped quietly out the back door. No farewell, no recognition. He'd done what he came to do. Because justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it wears jeans and drinks black coffee. Sometimes it sends a single text that changes everything. In the days that followed, the story spread. Franklin Hospitality issued a formal apology. Trevor Brooks was quietly reassigned, demoted in all but name. A new manager arrived, a retired Army sergeant who welcomed every guest by name. 2 weeks later, a bronze plaque appeared above Walter's booth, reserved for those who carried the weight to freedom. Beside it, a framed photograph. Walter Dean, young and unflinching in his marine dress blues. Every Sunday, Walter returned, and a second seat was always kept open for the stranger who once stood up. Daniel Ross never came back, but his absence echoed louder than presence. In the end, the diner became something more than a restaurant. It became a reminder that true courage doesn't boast, that respect must be earned and upheld, and that sometimes all it takes is one voice, one act, to shift the ground beneath injustice. Walter, when asked about it, would only smile and say, "Reminded me that good people still outnumber the rest." Subscribe to Ironheart Stories if you believe true leadership doesn't shout. It stands silently when others sit.